Man, I've been busting 97, I never care about the devil. Man, I've been busting 97, I never care about the devil. Since 17.
Now, let's bring in Arise analyst Frank Tietie and politics editor and director of news, Somna Sambo, joining us now to unpack this. Both of you gentlemen, thank you as always. Frank Tietie, let's begin with you. And that point raised even in that report that INEC more or less is on trial or will be on trial at the Election Petitions Tribunal. And recall that respected former president of the NBA, Olusegun Awakuba, actually raised an issue about INEC being a party to the election petitions, saying that it really should be neutral in this particular case. But what do you make of INEC's role in all of it?
INEC cannot be neutral. INEC will always justify the elections it has conducted and the results that it has declared. If it had any problem with those results, it probably wouldn't have declared them. If it had problems with regards to the procedures that were adopted that ran foul to the provisions of the Electoral Act, it wouldn't have declared the results. So if INEC had received all of the resources it required and requested for to conduct an election and went ahead to return winners for those elections, INEC would do everything possible, expectedly, to defend the outcome of the elections. And it's usually... In
spite of the many litigations?
There's an ample provision, budgetary provision by INEC to actually tackle litigation that will arise from the elections that it conducted. Our hope and expectation had always been that when would we get to that point, even for the presidential election, when INEC would actually conduct elections and there would be no much contention. Apart from Goodluck Jonathan, who decided to extend an unprecedented democratic culture of calling to congratulate the president actually before the results were declared. It means that INEC hasn't really conducted elections in such a manner that will elicit the confidence of the parties that have participated to the extent of now saying that we are good and fine, INEC did well. But we have now seen a culture, an established culture and norm of making litigation a part and parcel of our electoral process in a situation where those who actually seemingly lack the legitimacy to operate in terms of exercising popular mandate will first and foremost be declared and be sworn in before the courts will now give that stamp of legitimacy, that stamp of finality before they now take over and do proper governance. That's not too good for our democracy.
Let me bring in Somna here. Somna, and good to see you again. Thanks for your time as always. Very quickly, one of the key concerns Nigerians have raised is till this moment, we haven't actually seen the legal fireworks, begin. And it comes to some of the key concerns of many Nigerians, including Olusegun Awakuba, who said that the courts can be very proactive to the extent that these cases can be dispensed with before May 29.
Thank you so much, Sulaiman. It may be difficult for these cases to be dispensed of before May 29. Let's be very factual. Even the senior advocate of Nigeria knows that himself, but he's only just hoping that indeed the legal process could be hastened. But of course, you know that if the legal process is hastened and certain procedures are not, upheld, then that will open up another front for another legal battle. So it's good for it to actually go through the entire process and not rush. I mean, if we had followed what the Justice Uwe's report, committee report has said in 2011, wouldn't be where we are now, because I mean, by the recommendations of that panel, we would have been able to conclude everything before the president-elect is actually sworn in. But we have seen that that's not the case. In the First and Second Republic, you could see things like that happening, but it's unfortunate that in this Fourth Republic, we're not seeing things like that being, happening. But the good thing that I really love about what is happening here is that INEC is being put on trial itself. And that's why I think the petition by the Labour Party deserves some commendation, because they simply transferred the onus on INEC to prove to Nigerians that it conducted this election in accordance with its guiding law, which is the Electoral Act 2022. And then, of course, it's guidelines. And so it's left for INEC to prove to Nigerians, including through their server, and then of course you have the portal which they had put in place, IREV, for the viewing of results, to prove to us that they follow their own guidelines. And if they do that, you see that the Amazon Web Service that actually hosts the cloud services of INEC is being put into public glare right now. INEC will have to tell us through the Amazon Web Service, if they are subpoenaed, as to how exactly these results were uploaded, why we had delays. And INEC is saying that it's going to be bringing two witnesses from its IT department to talk to us as to why there were results delay here and there. Well, all of this will provide clarity. And if they do not know how to provide answers to these questions, of course, technology, there are trails. And of course, some of these petitioners will follow through the trails, and then of course it will be difficult for INEC to be able to uphold its integrity. But I can tell you that that petition by the Labour Party deserves a lot of commendation, and then of course that of Atiku Abubakar too, that said that some of the results ought to have been declared inconclusive in certain parts of the country. But INEC seemed too hasty and went ahead to do those declarations. So it's left for us to be able to see the full content of what Atiku meant by those things, by saying that some of those results that came in actually were declared hastily. And then the last part of it, before I let my other colleague come in, is that INEC National Chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, told us at the Collation Center that all the observations raised by the agents, the party agents there, were going to be attended to at the end of the collation before the final declaration was made. So at what point in time did the INEC National Chairman decide to go straight ahead and make the declaration without considering the complaints by the petitioners, by their party agents? I was there at the Collation Center, and I went live, and I said it clearly that the INEC National Chairman had promised Nigerians that he was going to review some of the observations, only for the INEC National Chairman to come back and announce the results. So these are some of the things that have led a lot of Nigerians puzzled, and Nigerians are right to request from INEC whether it followed its own procedures and the Electoral Act or not. It's left for the courts, and these judges, they are part of the Nigerian society, to tell us if indeed INEC obeyed the Electoral Act, the Constitution, and of course its own guidelines or not.
Frank Tete, a self-inflicted wound by INEC is what it seems like. But let's take, the issue, part of the issues raised by Olisa Abakoba, who says that, look, the fact that the Constitution prescribed a time frame of about 180 days does not mean that it must run its course. Since the policy has been, the polity has been overheated, and because of the exigencies of the times that we find ourselves, why not fast track this and end it before handing over? And I'd also like to know if a president-elect is sworn in May 29, in spite of the many litigations, the issue of immunity, how does that even play out in the scheme of things?
Oh, well, I think I'll start with the last part of your question. There is no doubt about the fact that the expectation provided by Section 138 of the Electoral Act is that the declared winner of any election would first of all be sworn in. In fact, the provisions, the wordings of Section 138 are that the person will enjoy the benefits of the office. Those are the exact words. Enjoy the benefits of the office, even if the election is being disputed, and not only that, even if a court, or in this case a tribunal, declares that the election is invalid or he lost the election, he will still remain in the office within 21 days before he files an appeal. That is the law. Sadly, the citizenry and the civil society in this country are always, coming late. They try to play catch up all the time. Where were we when the Constitution was amended, particularly Section 285, which makes it sacrosanct, as if cast on stone, that 180 days, your election petition, whether pre-election or post-election petition, must be concluded within 180 days. It doesn't end there. In the eventuality of an appeal, it goes on for another 60 days. days. Let me tell you, as a litigation lawyer myself, I know how much lawyers want to buy time to do the things they want to do. Not to even talk about the necessity to settle pleadings according to the rules of the election tribunal, which require 21 days for you to file, another 21 days for the other party to reply, and then you take another 5 days for a response by the original petitioner, and then you take another 7 days for you to sit down to settle, do pre-hearing hearings, pre-hearing meetings, and all that to settle what the issues are. Those are mandatory dates. I appreciate, you know, the brilliant Lisa Gbakoba, very brilliant fellow, but where was he? Because he always his postulations are exceptionally brilliant when it comes to law reform. But unfortunately, we have a constitution, a fundamental law of this country that has given those dates that nothing can change.
Yeah, but is it time to look at the ground norm? That
unfortunately, you must appreciate that the people who made those amendments to our constitution, you have an interest. And where were we? Where was the civil society? Where was the citizenry? Where were those we sent as the members of the Republic? I'm talking about parliamentarians who actually saw to those reforms. And don't forget,
Frank,
there are cases in the Supreme Court that have lasted for 20 years. Yet we are so interested in political cases that they shouldn't last beyond 180 days. That's the fear of many Nigerians,
Frank. That's the fear of many Nigerians. You're a lawyer. Now, quickly, we'll try to break it down to a level where everyone can understand. Nigerians would like to know, what's the delay about?
Look, let me be honest with you. There is really no delay. I think the contention the most learned senior advocate, Lisa Gbakoba, is making is that, well, let the courts realize that there is a moral burden on it, that it shouldn't really exhaust the 180 days. But when it comes to, the constitutional provision of 180 days, as a matter of fact, given the legal tradition of extreme delays in the legal process of Nigeria, 180 days is actually golden for any litigant. I'll be honest with you. For a court, for a case that could have taken 20 years to be determined in 180 days, that's an El Dorado. And that's what we were praising it, thinking that there was some kind of speed to the peculiar cases. They call it sui generis issues of election petition. However, Lisa Gbakoba is contending that for the good of the country, don't go there. However, Lisa Gbakoba suffers the many contentions against him when he even approaches Section 138 of the Electoral Act that says, no, swear him in first. Even if there is a valid court order removing him, he can still continue to stay there as governor, as president, until he exhausts his rights of appeal, and the days, particularly a calculated, culminated number of 240 days can actually be exhausted, and he remains there about 8 months as president or governor. That's our law. So we should really think of electoral reforms, but I doubt, where a constitutional amendment that favors politicians like this, and you ask politicians to amend it, hey, I think it's a tall dream.
All right, so Sumner, you made reference to the fact that before it came to this, there was a time when it didn't have to take that long to address these issues, election petition issues in the court. What exactly was the thinking of those who decided to change it to 180 days? What were the factors that may have led to that?
Well, the factors are that, as our democracy is growing, lots of Nigerians are being impatient with each other. And then if you look at, from 1999 till date, you see that every election comes with its own challenges, and a lot of politicians want to take advantage of the system. Political parties that do not prepare properly for elections want to use the courts to gain power. And that's the problem that we're having. And I must come very hard on the Labour Party and the PDP, and then the NMPP, good enough, is not challenging the presidential election, as we can see. But if the Labour Party and the PDP, for example, have formed an alliance, a working alliance, like they are trying to make us see after the outcome of the election, would we have been in this sort of situation whereby they are heightening tension across the land? I mean, look at the 6.7 million votes that Atiku got, and the 6.1 million that Peter Obi got. How many millions do we have? That's about 13 million votes. And then if you add 1 million by Kwankwanso, that's about 14 million. would we have been here with an APC, which is now seeing itself as a behemoth because of the lack of, these political parties coming together? So what the political parties in the opposition failed to do before election is what they are trying to do after the election by using the courts. And you and I know that there will always be a problem. And we've always stated it clearly here. Whether the days are more than 180 or less than 180, we should not allow our courts to play the role as to being the institution that determines who becomes a president or governor. The people must not be pushed away from deciding who is the winner of an election through the ballot. Our politicians want cheap win by going to the court. And that's why you hear some of them saying that they should be declared president. Why not insist that there should be a rerun? You see some of them asking to be declared president and at the same time asking that there should be a fresh election that will be held. So in all of this, it has to do with our political culture. A lot of people do not prepare properly before elections. You can see the post-election crisis that we are having in the management of political parties, how it's affecting everyone. Now, the political parties are going through the court system to see how they will circumvent it through technicalities and all of that to get a victory. But the people must be the ultimate deciders. And that's why I stated earlier that even the judges that are going to be sitting on these election petition tribunals, they are part of the Nigerian society. And as former President Goodluck Jonathan had warned, the final decider of an election must be the people through the ballot, not the courts. So the judges should not allow these politicians and political parties, presidential candidates or governorship candidates, to go through the court and get victory. Instead, they should allow the people to be the ultimate decider. And as such, when we are going to go into another constitution review exercise in the 10th National Assembly, we should be very careful to look at the time frame by which we give. Because even if you give 365 days, I can tell you that the politicians will still not find it as enough time. Our democracy is growing, but the democratic culture must change. People must learn to form alliances so that they do not overheat the polity.
All right, Somna, in the face of a growing democracy, talking of the people, let's bring it back to the people. And at this point in time, I would like to bring in Frank Tietie, who's also thinking that it's going to be a tall order for us to tweak our Electoral Act. Given that we'll be seeing a 10th Assembly that is made up of different political parties. Some have called it a rainbow coalition. Is there some form of hope that we might have the tweaking of our Electoral Act that will be beneficial to everybody here in Nigeria?
It's very easy to actually amend the Electoral Act, but not the Constitution. So when it comes to constitutional provisions, kind of difficult, and that's why it's taking us unaware that the Constitution made such provisions that the election petition should be determined for a whole lot of time, as much as 240 days before, even while the declared winner is still in office. That's a misnomer. And we forget somehow that reality doesn't really, support the fact that the people own the sovereignty in this country. Sovereignty belongs to the people of Nigeria, and government must operate according to the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Unfortunately, it's not so. It appears that those who run government, which is supposed to be in a short space of 4 years, are now the ones who operate, who have sovereignty.
So how do we bring the people back?
Because the people, they don't know. It's difficult, very difficult. Because we said people who are aloof, who are politically illiterate, they don't care about what happens. They sell their votes. They pursue politics of ethnicity. They say so long as our man that is there, he does anything, whatever he does is right. And it doesn't matter whether he plunges us into the sea of forgetfulness, whatever it is, let us just go on. So there needs to be some, our political acculturation, which requires a shift in the mindset. People must realize that, they own this country. Those who run government, those who are civil servants are not the ones who own the country. Unfortunately, they don't know. So until the people, and again, people think that it is only when they rise up in protests, in a revolution, that's when they can have their way. No, they must realize that, power belongs to them, and until INEC, in this case, reflects the will of the people, they will continue to be in bondage, as it appears now that the courts will now determine who actually reigns in this land as against the people, as the Constitution has declared in Section 14, Section 2 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Yeah.
Well, it's a fine place. I'd like to thank you for your time, Frank Tietie and Somna Sambo. Many thanks for Stay with us.